This is We the Sales Engineers podcast, show 218.
Welcome to We the SEs podcast, the show for sales engineers by sales engineers with your host, Ramsey Majaba.
What's up, SE Nation? Welcome back to another episode. Another great guest coming on today. Her name is Desanka. I'm not going to attempt to say her last name, but if you want, her LinkedIn profile will be in the show notes at wetheSalesEngineers.com/show218. Great conversation with Desanka, and we talked about how she worked hard for something and then she was unhappy when she achieved it, and how what she did to actually get past that. And then we talked about built-in tools versus vendors. We talked about working for an established company, and then we talked about going to a startup and building a team and the thought process that goes behind building a sales engineering team. I really enjoyed my conversation with Desanka, and so I hope you guys enjoy it as well. I hope the podcast reflects that to you. So without further ado, let's just jump into the show. Good afternoon, Desanka. How are you?
Hey, Ramsey. I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on.
It's my pleasure. I want to put it on record that I actually said your name correctly.
You did.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Well, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. It's a nice day in San Francisco, and we have a lot going on at work, a lot going on at home. It's fun, but I'm doing well.
And you have an interesting story. You weren't born in San Francisco. Not many people are, but you were born in a different country, and you kind of made your way to the US. Do you mind sharing a little bit of your background to the folks listening?
Yeah, of course. So I grew up in Macedonia, which is just north of Greece. And during my computer science studies, I did a lot of internships abroad. So I had the pleasure of moving around a lot. And I worked on my master thesis at the University of Maryland through this nonprofit I was part of. And that was near DC in 2007, right? Now I'm dating myself. But after that, having spent a year in DC, I went to Chicago for my first job out of college. And then I moved to San Francisco a couple of years after. And I've been here since. So I've been here like 12 years or so.
Okay. So I mean, you went to university around like 12 when you were 12 years old, right? That's
right.
And
yeah,
you were able
I
to do
skipped
so
a couple
many
of grades. Yeah.
Exactly. Right.
Yes.
And also from a career perspective, you've experienced some things. Can you share that as well?
Yeah, I mean, early, I was as a computer science major, as a developer, and it just didn't feel right in so many ways. I had my first kind of job internship. I was working, developing web applications for a project for NASA, and it was super, super exciting for a lot of people around me, except for me. I found it really boring, and I thought, if I'm not going to enjoy being a developer for NASA, I'm never going to enjoy it. So I might as well change careers. So I went and I got an MBA and I moved into IT. So I went from being a developer to moving into IT. I played a role of a business analyst for a little bit, building out internal homegrown tools. And I moved on to basically manage the IT team at a small business out in Chicago. Over there, we bought Salesforce and moved a lot of our homegrown applications onto the Salesforce platform. And I got really interested in that company, in that product. And, I went and I joined Salesforce when it was still relatively early on as an SE. That was my way into SE, from having been a customer to being an SE at Salesforce. I feel very lucky that I was one of the, kind of call it the second wave of SEs at Salesforce, but one of the 30 or so SEs. I joined when there was just an enterprise and a commercial team and of SEs. And then I just was very lucky to learn from some amazing SEs, amazing sales leaders, SE leaders, and I spent the majority of my career there. I was there for close to 10 years. And then recently, less than a year ago, I joined Ironclad. And at Ironclad, we are on a mission to power all of the world's contracts. We're solving a very basic problem of how businesses contract with consumers and other businesses. And it's really exciting. So I've been here for 10 months now, building out an SE team, and it's been super fun.
Okay. Let's go back to the beginning then. Why were you bored?
Yes.
Why were you bored during development? A lot of us are afraid that, all right, we're going to go to university, study something, and we're stuck with it for the rest of our lives. So maybe we'll answer the first question. Why were you bored? What didn't, I guess?
Yeah, it just didn't feel like the right thing for me in so many ways. I would find myself in just days of not talking to anybody and trying to solve a problem, which a lot of times felt like I'm doing on my own. It didn't feel very collaborative. And then I just, around me, I had a lot of really successful developers, and I looked at them and how big of a joy they got from solving something. And I just didn't get the same. I just didn't get the same thing. It was more of a torture than a joy. So I just didn't enjoy it. I was working at a cross-functional team at the time. There were, a lot of PhDs that worked on all kinds of engineering problems. And, I felt like I never really made friends with anybody. I felt like, I just didn't belong for so many reasons. But when I was leaving, it was kind of cute. They bought me a bunch of gifts. They threw me a party. They said how much they enjoyed my company. And I just didn't feel that during the tenure. So it felt like I just didn't belong in so many ways. I don't know if there is a better way to explain it.
It makes sense.
Could have been because I was like one of 2 women on a team of 20, but I don't know.
Would it have been possible that if you did the same job, but with another company that acted differently, could that have changed it? Or
Possible, yeah.
All right, we'll never know, I guess.
I think that it didn't give me joy. It's just solving an engineering problem didn't really give me joy. Talking to people and creating relationships and helping solve problems and helping move people is what gives me joy.
Okay. And
yeah.
How did you know that MBA is the right path? I mean, it's expensive in the US.
Yeah.
It's not cheap, so it's a risk.
It's a risk, but it was just something that I just needed to get out of computer science, and I thought if I went for business school, it would help me move out of development and move into, at the time, IT. I wanted to do product management. I was interested in that. I didn't even know the SE role existed, like many people that go into this role. So it was just a way for me to move in a different direction.
Okay. And did MBA help you get into IT? I don't put, hey, someone did MBA,
together.
Like, you must be in IT.
Yeah.
Right? So how did MBA help you get into IT?
I think it just it changed. I took a year to study, and it just I started looking for different types of roles. Right? I can talk a lot about how I got into IT and that job, but it was it was that year of just studying and trying to figure out what I was going to do next that helped. Right? It wasn't the MBA specifically helping me get that job, but taking a year to study was what helped me kind of figure out what my next move will be.
Okay. So instead of taking a year of not doing anything, you just research.
Kind of.
You decided to do an MBA and at the same time weigh your options of where you want to go.
Correct.
Okay. And so you did homegrown tools, and you're kind of the bane of every sales engineer's existence at the time, because almost
pretty much
we all compete against homegrown tools as sales engineers.
Yes.
Why did you decide to go with Salesforce when you already had, or did you have a homegrown tool that competed with Salesforce?
I mean, it's a pretty amazing story actually, but we were building on .NET, C# to be more specific. I had 2 developers that were working with me, and we were building a professional services automation app. If you think about what the company that I worked for was relocating expatriates for work. So for example, if let's say Ironclad, where I'm now wanted to relocate executives to Europe for work. This company would help them relocate their family, find a new place to live, do training for culture and language, etc. So that it was a small company at headquarters, but it had a really large network of consultants around the world that performed the services. And so we were building essentially software from scratch on how to manage all the programs, all the people that were relocating. And in the first year that I joined, we had something up and running, and it had, accounts and contacts and programs and consultants and tracking time, et cetera, et cetera. And it threw all kinds of errors, application error on the screen. And, we tried as hard as we could. But then the company had bought Salesforce. I think it only had 6 licenses at the time for the sales team. And it was the CEO who said, hey, go to this thing, Salesforce training, go figure out what this is. And is there something we can do on that tool rather than building? And, I give her a lot of credit, but it's how I learned a lot. And then what we had built in a year in C# and .NET, I built in 2 weeks on the Salesforce platform just by training. And I was just mind blown. And all of a sudden, thinking about like going back and solving problems and like hating it, it made me like development again. Like it made me like it. It was eye-opening. It wasn't, it wasn't back there writing code. It was knowing what the problem is and solving it with declarative tools. And I was just, mind blown. Yeah, I think that was, I'm answering the question.
No, that was a great answer. And
yeah, that's the story of why and how I got into Salesforce.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people who do homegrown tools kind of run into the same problem. Salesforce job, as a company, is to build Salesforce, right? Whereas teams that do homegrown tools, they're just a small team in a big company that has a different purpose. So they generally don't have the right support, training, resources.
Yeah, they have engineers like me, and that's like not, I'm not a great engineer.
I don't know about that, but you counted 3 people, yourself and 2 other people.
Yeah.
Whereas Salesforce has what, at the time, maybe 60 designers working on Salesforce. There's a big difference, right?
Yeah.
So
we've come a long way from debating whether build or buy is better. Let's just put it that way.
Not in every industry.
Not in every industry, yeah. We have a long way to go, but we've come a long way from where we were, I would say.
Yeah. I do believe that people understand. James Kakis just mentioned a book, Who Not How, which talks about you don't necessarily need to know how to build something. You just need to know someone who did it, and they can do it for you, and that's what you did. And so, less than 1 year at Ironclad, after 10 years at Salesforce. Salesforce is an established company, secure, you're good to go. Why would you make a move to go to a startup? And it's a risky move. It's always a risky move to go to a startup. Why did you make that decision?
It took me a really long time. I mean, it took me a really long time to come to terms. I really, really enjoyed my time in Salesforce. I'm still friends with so many people. I love the ecosystem. It was, 2 things. It was the team and the TAM, right? So Ironclad has an incredible team of a lot of industry veterans too, a lot of great people from Salesforce and DocuSign and Zendesk and Palantir and Google. A lot of really amazing people have joined, and Ironclad does things in the right way for my standards. They hired, I think more than half of the company was lawyers in the beginning, and they're building software for lawyers. So it's very informed. And we have a platform that can handle any type of contract, and having being in the Salesforce ecosystem and knowing the contract lifecycle management and contract management platforms out there, and then having seen what Ironclad can do, it was just the geek in me thought it was a no-brainer, like this technology will win. And then so, if you look at the team, we had, what I thought was a great platform that our team can build on. And then we also have the total addressable market, because Ironclad handles anything from high volume, online, non-negotiated contracts, like terms and conditions you sign every day, to highly negotiated high volume order forms for business, business to business sales or vendor agreements in procurement. It's a really a unique cross-platform capability. So any business needs that, right? Any business needs that. And in order for businesses to run, they need contracts. And so, we think of ourselves as somebody who will establish a new contract format, like no longer Word and PDF and slapping a digital signature on top will be the future of digital contracts. We think that Ironclad is the new format for digital contracts, and we're on a mission to help make that happen.
Nice.
Yeah.
So now that you like Salesforce, by the end of your career there, it's the incumbent. Like when instead of people saying CRM, they say Salesforce. It's like Kleenex. And now you've moved to Ironclad. So you went from an incumbent to a startup that may not be very well known. How has that changed either your behavior or the sales cycle, or just your experience in selling the product?
Oh yes, everything is different. That's what you're asking me, right? Like everything is different. It has changed. All right, where do I even begin on this one? So when I joined, there were 6 SEs on the team, and having come from Salesforce, where we had a very established solution engineering team, very established sales motions, very established value selling practices. The whole company was like a go-to-market machine. We all kind of, if you went to Salesforce and learned how to sell there, it was better than any school that you could have gone to, right? So it was all of those practices that I was familiar with, and I joined a team that, quite frankly, didn't have any SE practices when it comes to pre-sales consulting and solution selling and value selling, but rather performed as more of a demo engineer team. Like what the SEs did was they would fill out RFPs, they would fill out security questionnaires, they would build a trial for a prospect, because we're a startup, we didn't have trials on our website, we do now. They would build a prospect, will give them a contract. We deal with contracts. So they would build out a custom demo with prospect contracts. And that was the extent of what SEs did at Ironclad when I joined. So we've gone on from, I think in a year, we went from 4 to 13 SEs, and, looking to obviously grow further from there. But there were significant changes we had to do to start to adopt solution selling. And that's what we're on the journey on right now, right? It's we hired a security and compliance specialists, an RFP, we hired demo engineers, we hired SEs that have done solution selling before. We rolled out a bunch of training to teach SEs customer-centric discovery and demo to win and all the different practices, right? So it's very, very different. I'm not sure if this is more directly answering your question, but it was kind of eye-opening how differently startups with small teams have to function, because they didn't have another choice. There was no chief security officer. So SEs have to do security and vendor assessments, right? So it's from that perspective, that was my biggest realization, I guess, and shock when I joined.
My biggest realization and shock while you were talking is that it's not just startups who have those issues. Like big companies still have SEs doing the RFPs, the demo preparation and all that, and are seen as a free resource for the salespeople than a true partner who are there to do solution consulting versus
Yeah.
the speeds and feeds. Like, hey, how many licenses do you want, or how many people are going to be logging into the system? So it's not just startups. So
Yeah.
don't
You
feel
know
too
what
bad.
I'm learning now as I am expanding my own network, because I've been in the Salesforce ecosystem for so long, is that it really oftentimes depends on the product, right? On what you're taking to market, because sometimes the product is really not that complex and it doesn't require complex solutioning. And then SEs have a different role to play in those. And then sometimes you have, you got to solve deep business problems, and then you got to empower your SEs to be pre-sales consultants and not demo engineers. So that's something I'm learning as well. And then you also have the consumption sale, right? Something that I wasn't familiar with before, that I'm learning more about now, because we have one of our products that is consumption based. So then how do you empower prospects in a trial to be successful before they buy, and then assure their adoption will drive revenue? Like those are other, just different types of motions in pre-sales. And so I'm learning a lot, and it's just been fascinating to learn that there's not one way to be a successful solution engineer, right?
That's definitely true. And it's dependent on a lot of different factors. I mean, I work for my company, we have very complicated solutions, but the customers that already bought my product and I continue to buy this, like just more of it, it's a different motion than brand new customers.
Right.
So yeah, like the motion changes. There's a lot of dependencies all over the place. But and now that you're thinking of building the team, like you kind of did a lot. The initial team was doing demos, was doing RFPs, and you kind of separated them. Now there's someone specialized and there's someone specialized. Why did you decide to separate them? Why shouldn't SEs do all of that versus having someone working on a demo and someone working on an RFP?
Yeah, I like to call out my dear friend Todd Jensen on this one. He says, we're not unicorns. Have you seen his episodes around where everybody's trying to make the SEs unicorns? Like basically Swiss knives, do it alls. Like, I just don't think that's possible. And so, we gotta build a team that can scale, that can support a lot of account executives, a lot of customers, and putting people in place that would allow them to specialize. I believe in that. I believe that it's powerful. Why, you might ask, but call it experience, call it need for scale, call it listening to the feedback, right? So when I joined, I was first listening to the feedback and what SEs enjoyed doing and what they didn't enjoy doing, and creating an environment where people can be happy in their job as a leader it's my top priority. So that, the feedback drove a lot of it too. But that's, that in short, that's why I think it's important to create specializations and have people do what they're really good at.
Okay. So for those SEs on the front lines, like meeting customers every day, are you thinking of having them specialize in different areas, or are these generalist SEs and they can lean on the specialists behind them?
Yeah, so this is a really critical question and is very different based on where you go and how complex your solution is. You said you have a very complex solution. Where Ironclad is right now, our SEs are handling our whole product line, which is really not, it's not extremely complex. It has a part that is, for non-negotiated contracts, and it has a part that's for negotiated contracts. It has a repository. It has, it has components, but it's all part of like one solution. You can't really separate it. And so, we right now our SEs handle everything Ironclad. I learned during my tenure at Salesforce, as we were growing our portfolio, I joined Salesforce when we had only CRM. We were just buying some of the companies that then became Service Cloud. Like we were still just a sales automation tool. And so, having seen how the SE role changed as our product portfolio grew, and having specialists was very, very important. But even to date, Salesforce keeps those like core generalists in place. It's just that the role changes. It changes from a product expert to I mean, I hate to say it, but project manager in a way, like you're managing all the different resources. And so that requires different skills, different hiring profile, right? But at Ironclad right now, our SCs are product experts on the Ironclad platform. And then we have the specialists we have, product specific. We have a developer advocate who's helping us with some of our APIs and integrations, right? Because it's a big part of our offering. And then as our platform grows, we might have more.
Like, I don't like the idea of, so I'm a journalist SE, and if someone told me, hey, you're a project manager,
I know it's a word.
I mean, I know it's right, but I like to think of myself as a customer advocate. Like, my job is
There
to
you
make
go.
sure that
Yeah, better word.
and my job is to get them the answers. Doesn't matter
There you
how,
go.
the customer shouldn't care how. Get them the answers, make sure they're happy, make sure they end up buying from you.
I'm going to use that term from now on.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, there you go. You're welcome. I'm glad to be of use on this call. So right now that you're building the team, I mean, there's a lot of debate about like pooled SE model versus partner SE model. And I wrote a blog for Vivin about that, which I got a lot of pushback. Like, I wanted partnered, I wanted one-to-one, and it's like, oh no, it should be pooled. What are your thoughts around which is better?
Yeah, it depends, right? It depends on the type of company, the stage of the company, the this and that. So I'll tell you where I am right now, and I'll share my experience. But so in fact, before I tell you where we are now at Ironclad, let me go back to my beginning SE days when I was a brand new SE at Salesforce and we had a pooled model. Nobody wanted to work with the new SE. Like, everybody wanted to work with the KeyCast SE that has been there 6 months before. Like, we didn't have
The veteran.
The veteran been there 6 months, right? So you know, it was challenging, but it was also like, it was a way for a lot of SEs to like build their brand and make sure that, you know, people wanted to work for them. It allowed space for so a lot of hungry SEs to make their name. But we shortly after moved to an assigned model and haven't looked back. And you know, for somebody who's coming into the workforce as a new SE, like, that was just amazing, because now I had a team that I was assigned to, that I can build my relationship with. I can control my calendar a little more. I have a, you know, set of accounts or type of accounts, industry, whatever, you know, segment. I just had a lot of consistency. And for the amount of context switching that SEs do on a daily basis from account to account, I just didn't need more context switching in my day to go from an AE to AE. So, you know, I feel like the assigned model has so many pros, quite honestly. There's some cons that I'm happy to share, but I think it needs to be the right time for a company to introduce the assigned model, right? If you have 2 SEs and you're just starting, you're not, you know, that doesn't make sense.
In that case, you're assigned, the 2 SEs are assigned to all the salespeople.
There you go. Yes, yes. So like it really and then there is a combination. There's some places where you'll see the generalists be assigned, but then the specialists are pooled, right? So it's always about what's the right balance for the company. But let me now share. So that was kind of my experience when I was starting as an SC, and the experience joining Ironclad, they had a pooled model, and I think it works well for AEs. I think it's really good for AEs because they can always find an SC to drop on the calendar, right? They don't have to shuffle calendars and try to make sure their SC can make it, and then like the manager doesn't have to make sure there's coverage for that person if they're if they're away. So there are some of the cons of the aligned model, right? But the pros in my experience just outweigh the cons in multiples. And so as soon as we became a team of 10, and as soon as we had we had 10 different AE teams with their managers, and we could do a manager to SC alignment. We introduced it at Ironclad, and it has worked really well. I think for the SC specifically, it works a lot better. Might be a little more challenging for the AE in terms of scheduling, but for the SC and for their performance and for their ability to be a trusted advisor, it is just night and day. I would say when you're a pooled resource, you're a resource, and then when you're an aligned SC, you're just more empowered to become a partner.
Can you elaborate a little bit more on that? Like, what specifically allows the SE become more of a partner in a assigned model versus?
So you're gonna work that, you're gonna work that account. You're gonna work that account 3 demos, 5 demos, 6 discoveries, whatever, depends on where you are. If you're in small business, you're gonna do as many calls as needed. If you're an enterprise, you're gonna work that account maybe for a year or 2. And so in a pooled model, I feel like you take the next available SC for the next call, and you gotta you're gonna try to keep that same SC for the follow-up calls, right? But if you have the option of choosing another call, often AEs just choose the calendar rather than the relationship. They're like, well, I don't have that person, but customers said they can only do it on this time, so I'm going to take this other SC, right? So it just makes it a little harder to be consistent with an account. And when you're not consistent with an account, it's a lot harder for an SC to have a point of view on how to make that account successful. And I think the best SCs build up a point of view in how certain prospects should leverage their technology to solve problems, achieve goals, and be successful. So, I'm kind of speaking from the top of my head here, but I think that's one of the big reasons why that aligned model really works, is because it allows for consistency and developing a point of view.
So I'm just gonna restate what you just said in my words to make sure I understood you correctly.
Yeah.
So SEs in a partnered model, they get the chance to actually own the technical relationship with the customers throughout the life cycle, which gives them better insight towards, hey, this person said this thing one day, so I'm going to use it in a demo, which gets lost in translation if there was a pooled model, and it's in the notes. So
yeah,
okay, no.
Yeah. I mean, you build a relationship with the AE, you build a relationship with the prospect, with the customer, and you develop, an idea, a point of view of what that customer should do, which quite often is really necessary. The prospect so often doesn't know what they need and what they like. They're coming to you for advice. You are the expert in this area. You built the product, right? So tell me, what should I do? And I think the best SCs have a strong point of view on those questions. Yep. And quite frankly, it's really difficult to build if you're running from writing an RFP to a discovery call to a demo that the AE did discovery for. It's just a really, really difficult thing to do.
The one thing I would say is bad about the partnered model is if an SE gets stuck with not necessarily a bad AE, but an AE that they do not click with, right?
Right.
And becomes a hard relationship. Like, I've worked with SEs that were bullied by account managers. The account managers were good and they were hitting quota, which meant they're good for the company.
Yeah.
But it was just not a good fit with the.
Yeah, and the other con would be just territory, right? What if you get stuck with a territory that's not performing, no matter how big how much you try? Yeah. Like, that's, there's definitely some cons. But I think that, the territory questions, such like if you ask an AE leader, they'll say like, that's an excuse. Like, that's never the reason. Every territory is a good territory, which, I agree with. You can do a lot to influence that, but like an AE can do a lot more to influence the territory, and SC on the other hand, like, a little less control over that. So I don't know. It's whether the partnership with the AE or the territory you're working, like, there's definitely some cons, but this is where good leadership comes in play, and, make sure to take input, pair people right, change alignments, right? Make people happy in their jobs. Like, that should be the SE leader #1 priority.
Yeah. I agree with that, but also it's on the SE. I feel it's every individual's responsibility to take ownership of their life, and if it's in their best interest to make sure they click with the account manager. I mean, they're not going to get married. Everybody's going to go home at the end of the day. So for those few hours that you're working together, just put in an effort to build a good relationship. And maybe it's just a misunderstanding. A lot of times it's just communication.
Well, it's certainly a skill that can be developed, right? So AE relationships and in general, partnering, collaborating, it's something that can be developed in SEs as well. So, sometimes it's just not going to work out, but a lot of times you should be working on improving yourself so you can work with any SE. Over my career, I've worked with over 100 AEs, if not more. And so just the ability to be a partner and to be helpful with different types of people is also a virtue and a talent in itself.
Yeah. So, all right, based on that, what you just said, what are the qualities of the AE that made it easier for you to work with versus those that made it harder for you to work with?
Let me
one
think.
or two, because there might be a million, but a couple.
I mean, listening. I will say like listening is my go-to for so much, but for AEs too. Like, will the AE truly listen, not just make recommendations, but listen? And then when I say that, like, it goes against the partnering component, right? So will they truly ask and want to know how to better work on an account, how to better partner with you, how to better do discovery, how to better align, just so with the customer, so many things that the AE can be, if they're listening and if they're open, so many people can help them. And this isn't just the SC, this is their manager, this is their other peers. Like if AEs, I feel like, are listening, they're going to be a lot better in performing. And then the other part is that I have found really successful, like you will have those AEs that are top performers, and then they sometimes come off demanding, right? Like demanding of their team, etc. I actually always found that the less they knew about what other people knew, like the less they knew the technical side, or the less they knew the contract side or this or that, and the more they knew how to partner with people internally to get things done. And I think you brought this up, to be a customer advocate, the more successful they were. And I would just watch them, like, and then I would watch AEs that try to do discovery, and then they would be like, oh, I got this, I got the demo, just really struggle to get complex big deals done. So I think, I don't know, maybe those two, right? So listening and then just knowing how to partner with others, I think is really key.
I mean, there's a couple of things you said about, like when you said listening and you talked about like asking for feedback and all that. I found those all like leadership traits that you were saying. Like basically salespeople have to have some leadership traits to basically to get the most out of their SEs. And one thing a VP of sales told me, like, early on, the best sales teams are those who know how to leverage others. It's not just the salesperson who knows how to leverage their SE. It's the SE who knows how to leverage the specialist. I work with a lot of SEs who don't want to give the RFP out to the RFP specialist to work on. They want to do it themselves, right? Which delays the process. And
that's not great.
Yeah, but no, this is I wanted to say something else, but I forget because I'm talking too much. But anyways, we'll move on.
We're talking about pooled versus assigned SEs and what's better, and then the AE relation. We touched on the AE relationship.
Yeah. I think I said everything I wanted to say. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
All right, never mind. Just I'm going on a tangent right now. You mentioned that part of your job is kind of like to make sure that your SEs are happy and to help your SEs achieve their goals and all that. I kind of hold, I don't know if it's a controversial view of things, but I feel like SEs also, or individual contributors, it's in their best interest to make sure that they're helping their managers, especially in startups where everything's going nuts and managers putting out fires left and right. What can SEs, individual contributors, do to help their managers be successful, which in turn will make them more successful as well.
Yeah. So if I look at the team now, like the number one thing we need is wins. Like, how can you win more, right? And so if you win, which like is hard, what are all the different things that you need to win? But like, just be laser focused on winning. If you're an individual contributor SE, especially, I mean, everywhere, but I don't even know if I would say especially at a smaller startup where every win matters. Like just go and win. Like, find what works, like find how to win, ask for help, ask your manager for help, just go and win is the best thing you can do. And then when you win and when you find what works, go and do it 100 times. Just find what works and do it 100 times. Like, just don't reinvent the wheel. And I think that helps the managers a lot, because all of a sudden we start to develop, call it playbooks, right? Yeah. So, and we start to develop what works, start to develop point of view, and that helps for scale. That helps. I mean, that's the only way we scale. If every SC has to figure out how to win on their own, and if there is no answers to common, frequently asked questions, that doesn't scale. And so go in, find what works, do it 100 times. And then the other thing that I'm sharing a lot with the SCs on our team is value is viral. Like, what are you going to learn from these wins that you can create that will add value to our sales team, to our SC team, to our customers? Because when it's valuable, it goes viral, and it helps our SCs, build their brand, get better, help others, help the manager. So those are some, just right now how I'm approaching things, because of where we are at the stage of Ironclad, where we gotta create ways we can scale. And so who knows, that might change in a couple of years when we're at a different stage as a company, but winning, doing it 100 times, like repeatability and creating value is what I've been preaching with my team right now.
Like what you're just saying right now is pretty much gold, right? Because a lot of times we win and we never sit back and think, how did we win? We just move on to the next thing, which means we can't repeat what we just did. We're gonna go reinvent the wheel. And you didn't say it per se, but you're basically saying, share that, how you won, so that you can build a playbook, right?
Yes.
And so other teammates can learn from you as well.
Yes.
And that I find, maybe it's just the world that I live in. We don't share that information as SEs. Maybe in Salesforce they did, but the companies that I've seen, that I've worked with, we don't. And the only times we share a win is when there's a big win at a global kickoff, and the account manager comes up and talks for like 15 minutes about how great they are. And from an SE perspective, all I can think of was like, but how? Like, how did you do that? Oh, we won this because we did that. But how did you?
So something we're currently doing is we're developing what we call solution strategies. And what that means is, like, we see that something works. Like in our world, we do contracts. And so we just did a couple of deals on clinical trials and clinical trial contracting. So let's take that and make it shareable, but not just the fact that we won and how big the deal was and how great the SC is or how great the AE is, but what was the solution that helped us win that? What problem were we solving? How did we solve it? What kind of impact did it have on the business? And then what are the customer stories that we can share? And if we can create that and say, and then the next time a healthcare company comes along, like clinical trials, we can go and say, oh, here is why, here's how, here's what, so.
I would add to that, like, what are the questions that the sales team asked to get the customer to realize they have that problem? Because we always say, oh, you have this problem. Like, no, like, all right, let me come back and ask you a few questions so that you can realize you
yeah.
have that problem. But yeah, no, this is great.
Very good point. Yes.
All right. Well, this has been great, Desanka, and I could talk to you forever, but we need to move on to the not so fly round. These are the same 4 questions that I ask almost every guest for 200 episodes. So I'd love to hear what you think about them as well. We'll start with number 1, obviously, is what do you love about sales engineering or building the sales engineering team?
It's fun. It's a lot of fun. I think it's a really interesting role. It's a blend of all kinds of different people from different backgrounds that are all interested in solving problems and moving people. And I just find it really joyful. I like the people that are in this profession. I like the the challenges we have to overcome. So it's just been a lot of fun for me, quite honestly.
No, this like after 200 episodes or like more, I think you're the only one who answered because it's fun. Like,
yeah.
No one, like if you ever played a sport, no one asks you, oh, why do you play basketball? And you say, oh, because I can dribble, I can do this. No, because it's fun. And you're the first person to ask.
Really, I
was,
think it's a lot of fun.
For some reason, it's eye-opening for me. All right, maybe we try to make it more complicated than it actually is. So right now, the second question usually is, what would you change? But since you're an SE leader and you have the capability to change, what is something that bothered you in the past that you are now able to change with your new company in terms of sales engineering?
I think, I mean, something that, and this has to do with having come from a really big company, going to a startup. Something that I saw here was our ability to influence product roadmap at a smaller company is so much bigger or easier or faster than it is at a big company. And so that's one area that I think we have a lot of room for improvement as a profession, as SEs, as a team. I think our input into product specifically and how things get developed often falls through the cracks. Like there is all kinds of ways we keep track of, we log gaps, we log the product feature requests, we have conversations at Salesforce. We ran PM SE Summit. We would get together in a room for 2 days and talk about, so there is a lot of great ways feedback is channeled, but I think that that's one area that I think as an SE organization, we can improve on, because we are really great partners with sales and we are sometimes good partners to product, but there is a lot of room for improvement. I don't have answers, but it's something I am, I just am seeing a difference from coming from a big company to a small company and the power you have. And so now I'm just trying to figure out how do we get a better feedback loop, better alignment. So
right now, like there are companies coming out with solutions specifically for that, because it's a big problem, like Vivint, Home Run, Pudding, Proverity. Like there's 3 that I just named off the top of my head. The big problem that I see for most sales and engineering organizations is that they're not given enough budget to buy the tools that they need, which kind of sucks. So
yeah, and I don't know, there is tools, there is certainly tools help, but I think it's the fundamental alignment. It's like you hear this, and I think PreSales Collective just had a survey on this, like who should solution engineering report to, sales or product or CS or this and that. And I think the fact that we're in sales, and I'm very much pro, we should be part of sales, but there is something about a closer alignment with product that or product marketing, or I don't know what it is, but there is room for improvement there.
Well, here's a question. Do you think sales engineering should report to none of the above and should report like the CFO, chief field officer for everybody in the field, like from an?
I mean, that's where I report into our chief revenue officer right now. So it's not a sales leader, but I don't know what field.
I
know
made it up.
field is both. Yeah, we don't like right now. We don't have one person. We have a revenue officer and a customer officer too. But I know, I think Splunk recently did some kind of reorg where they brought a bunch of organizations on their field, inclusive of the SEs. I know there is movement in that direction. So who knows? It could, I'm curious to learn from others, and maybe that's the right way to do it.
I just think like we should be a liaison between sales and engineering.
Yeah, and in some companies that's better done than others, and I just think the two companies I've been at, it's just not really great. It's good, but there is room for improvement.
Yeah. All right. So the third question of the day: is there a resource you recommend to your SEs that they should read, listen, watch? Whether it's about sales engineering, sales, whatever. Is there one resource you would recommend?
I think the PreSales Collective and joining that community and all the resources they share would be like the one go to. It's kind of big. But I recently picked up the book Buying is Hard. No, Selling is Hard, Buying is Harder. Which I thought was really interesting. If you haven't read Mastering Technical Sales, which is like an old school, I think that's a really good book. And just there is a lot of formal training now for SCs. I would say those are worth investing in.
Nice. All right. Last question of the not so fire round. Is there a habit you're working on today to improve in your personal or professional life?
A habit?
Yeah.
Going to bed early?
Yeah, that's the same habit I'm working on.
Oh, are you?
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know. I just never managed to go to bed early, and I think I need to. I hear about a lot of really successful people going to bed early and waking up early, like at 5 a.m. I always thought, how do you wake up at 5 a.m.? Like, that's crazy. But then I'm like, oh, if you go to bed at 9, then I guess it makes sense. I've never been able to do that. But something I'm trying.
Yeah. So I have on my phone, I automated that it automatically turns off Wi-Fi and data at 10 o'clock at night. Now the big problem is not turning it back on as soon as it turns off.
Oh yeah.
That is like, it's just a button. Just click that button.
Yeah.
But yeah,
it's just a button away.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. We'll see. Hopefully it works for me, but it's one thing that I'm trying to get more of, and that's sleep. But I also have a 1-year-old and a 6-year-old, so that makes it really hard.
Yeah, no, I can see that. I have a 1-year-old, 4-year-old, and 6-year-old. So yeah, I know the feeling. I don't wake up as much at night.
That's why we have the same habit, Ramsey.
Yeah. I try to go to bed early, it doesn't work out. All right. Desanka, this was great. Is there any question that I should have asked you, which I didn't?
I think we're good. I enjoyed our conversation. Thank you. And look forward to continue the conversation.
Sounds good. And if anyone wants to reach out to connect with you, where can they do that?
LinkedIn is good.
All right, cool. I'll have your LinkedIn in the show notes, and thanks a lot. We'll talk soon.
That sounds good. Bye-bye.
And we're done. That brings us to the end of the show. This was a great discussion. I really enjoyed talking to Desanka. I hope, again, you guys saw that and you enjoyed my conversation with Desanka. A good exercise that I like to do is, if you were to build your own team, what would it look like, and what would the individual SEs do? From my perspective, it helps as an individual contributor as well, in terms of like, this is the team that I would like to work for. I would rather work for a team that's pooled versus one-to-one or one-to-many, or vice versa. Or I'd like to work for a team that has specialists behind us and has demo people behind them to do all this. Or I'd like to be the person doing the demo. Like, these are all things that will help you understand what you'd like to do. And maybe in one day you'd actually have the chance to build a team of your own. So it'll be an interesting process for, I don't know, I just think it's interesting. I'd love to hear your thoughts about it. And if you have any comments, please make sure to leave a comment on LinkedIn, on the YouTube channel, wherever it is that you find it more comfortable to put it in. By the way, I do have a YouTube channel, which I post these podcasts on. Now, for the usual weekly plug that I've been putting, I do have the SE hotline that's meant to help individuals who want to get better at their job, want to improve their skill set. If you if you feel like you need help, check it out. You can book 15 minutes with me at no cost to you. We can have a chat, see if we can work together or not. The goal is to basically help as many SEs as possible. I've mentioned that on the podcast before, around 10,000 SEs in 5 years. That's the goal. How we're going to achieve that is, well, it's going to be a challenge, that's for sure. So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you will come back next week and listen to more episodes, and I will see you guys next time. With that, I'm signing off.